Hey folks, hope you guys are having a great Saturday. It's time for the Fantasy Livewrite. We're going to keep working on this book that we've been doing for a while. Not too much to talk about this week. I do want to talk about one kind of interesting writing topic that I can give you an example from something that was making the rounds on Twitter, which was this Reddit post about this from this girl who's like, I think I broke up my relationship by trying to compliment my boyfriend. Now, nothing on the internet's real, right? But this is a thing that doesn't smack of somebody making up a story to like make some sort of point, but rather like actual miscommunication between the male and the female perspective. And the reason that I would kind of want to talk about this in the context of writing is that males and females have different fantasies when it comes to romance and different fantasies when it comes to sex. And not so much that like the sex is different, but the context of how that occurs is going to be different for males and females when it comes to fantasy. So when you're writing a book or you're writing anything, right? When you're making anything with a story, how that fantasy is expressed and how you write a romance and how that's received is going to depend on your understanding of these factors. So let me see if I can find it real quick, and then I'll just explain what I've seen with this. Basically, she complimented the guy, tried to compliment him by saying he isn't someone that she would like have a one-night stand with, but someone that she would marry. Isn't someone that she'd have a casual relationship with, but is in fact someone that she would marry. And the guy took that as an insult. Why did he take that as an insult? And the answer is because she basically said, I'm not attracted to you outside the context of a marriage. Is that a problem? Well, it certainly can be. Right, here it is. Okay, let me bring it up here. All right. Here it is. I think I destroyed our relationship trying to compliment my boyfriend. My boyfriend and I are both 28 years old and together for 2.5 years. Yesterday night we were drinking and one thing led to another, and I tried to compliment him by saying he's not someone who I would hook up or be friends with benefits with, but marry. I thought everything was fine, but he seemed extremely distraught after that. I realized how he understood it and tried to clarify it, but he's still in the same this morning. He told me he needs space to think for a while and left the house. All my friends tell me I messed it up, and guys tell me it's not a compliment. Most men will understand it differently. I think I destroyed a relationship and I'm panicking right now. So, women, when it comes to romance and when it comes to talking about relationships, they put the context of the relationship first, right? And so commitment to a relationship is a superior state. Whereas men understand that relationship and commitment to relationship is dependent on various different factors, right? That there's a relational exchange that's going on. And so when a woman basically says that she either has or is willing to have casual relationships and you are not in that category, it basically says that your value is totally dependent on things that aren't sexual, basically. It's like, it'd be like, to put it in the female perspective, it'd be like, I really like having sex with you. Let's never change anything. Right? So the relationship's not going anywhere. That would be deeply insulting to a woman. Right? It's to say like, I like having sex with you, but I won't marry you. So that's kind of the reverse. Or maybe it's something that's like, I really like how you're a 5 because then I don't think you're going to cheat on me. Right? I'm just saying you're loyal. It's like, no, you said I was ugly. That you feel confident that I wouldn't be able to cheat on you because I'm a 5, right? Well, I was trying to say she was loyal. I appreciate her loyalty more than her attractiveness. Women won't take it that way. They'll take it as you're ugly. So when you're writing a romance, yeah, she made him feel like the guy she settles for. So when you're writing a romance, what's the male fantasy? There's 2 layers of a male fantasy. The first one is a male sexual fantasy, which is that a woman is attracted to him and wants to have sex with him without him doing anything. That's the sexual fantasy, right? That's why a lot of male explicitly erotic fantasies involve things like harems, right? Where like women are forced to share a man because they want him so bad, which is not realistic in certainly in the modern context, and was really only realistic in the pre-modern context for men who were extremely wealthy. And it wasn't that they were super attractive, it's that their status and their wealth was so high they could support multiple women, right? So there was still almost an exchange there. But the male fantasy is that I'm so virile that women can't resist me. But that's not the male romantic fantasy. The male romantic fantasy is actually in like a really stiff competition with that, and that's a woman who's like deeply, deeply loyal. So loyalty is like the most important virtue a man directs towards women, or wants from women, I should say, is loyalty. Whereas it's not necessarily that case for men. So what she's trying to express is like, I would be loyal to you, but she expressed it as like, I would be loyal to you, but I wouldn't just have sex with you. That's how it comes out, which is like, you're only loyal. Why are you loyal to me? You're not loyal to me because you care about me, because you know who I am, because you love me. You're loyal to me because of some other reason, right? You're loyal to me because I have money. Like, what is it? Like, why are you loyal to me? You're not loyal to me because of me. You're loyal to me for some other reason. Otherwise, you would have, wanted to sleep with me right away. So the male fantasy is really that the woman's just very loyal and attached to him. The female fantasy works differently. Female fantasy is more about capturing and holding the loyalty of a like high status male. So the status of the man matters. It's kind of this thing where like women will want to cheat with, if they're going to cheat, it's usually with a higher status man, whereas men don't think that way. And then, for women, because they're a lot more vulnerable, having a secure relationship is more important, right, than merely being attracted to someone. So the female romance fantasy is really about taking a dangerous high-status man and taming him to be both a dangerous high-status man, but also a man who's a loyal protector and who she can rely on and who's committed to a relationship. So romance novels often go that way. They start with, a really super experienced, super desirable, very attractive man with high status, high success, and through the cunning of the woman and her innate attractiveness, because that's part of the fantasy as well, is that you're just so attractive that a man will give up everything for you, right? He ends up being pulled into a more traditional relationship. So it's kind of an inversion of what men want. Men want, it's not a complete inversion, but men want a woman who's loyal because of who he is, whereas women are capturing the loyalty of someone who is really high status, and therefore that recognizes their elevated status. But for men, it's not that way. And in real life, men would pretty happily marry a less attractive woman if he felt completely sure of her loyalty. Like, sexual attractiveness is not like something that is, he's not sexually responsive. He's active. And so being sexually active, you don't need every woman to be super, super, super attractive, right? So when you're writing romance from those perspectives, you have to think about like who the audience is. A good example of this is there's very few romances written for men or for males, let's say. They're more common in Japan. So if you're watching Japanese romantic comedy anime, you'll find it's very popular with male audiences in America. Why? Well, it's because there's just not a lot of stuff that takes into the male perspective in America. So if you're watching something that is like, I don't know, what am I thinking of? Toradora, right? This is a romantic comedy anime. They start off not liking each other, but through their mutual cooperation, they end up like falling in love with each other, right? And so the male fantasy is not the most attractive woman, the woman with the biggest boobs or something, Women often think that's the way men think, but that's not really the way they think when it comes to romance. It's really that the short little kind of tsundere girl just really loves him for who he is. That's the male fantasy, is to have a woman love you not for your money, but for who you are. Kind of weird, right? But that's how it goes. Whereas the female fantasy is the man has all the status and money and then loves you. It's just it's directed towards different ends in the romantic fantasy space. So you got to know those differences. And if you know those differences, then it's really easy to see why saying to a man, "You're not the kind of guy I would ever just sleep with. I would marry. You're the kind of person that I would demand marriage of," is actually an insult, because it's saying like, "Wait a minute." So there's like super virile men that you would just bang, but I'm not one of them. And why would you even want to be with me? Oh, because I have money, or because I'm stable, or because I have these other virtues that you don't actually have any kind of attractance to. You don't really like me for who I am. You like me for some context that I exist in. That's what's insulting to men. Because the male romantic fantasy is, you like me for who I am. So like, if you're a woman and you really want a guy to like fall in love with you, you got to be interested in the things that he cares about and compliment those things and what he does, right? So if he's a musician, you listen to his music and you say you like it, and you tell him what you like about it, and he's going to feel like you like him for who he is, right? You take an interest in the things he's interested in. Women often don't do that. Women often just couldn't care less about what a man is interested in. They only care about these other contexts, and then maybe take an interest later on. It doesn't make a man feel like he's anything. It makes it feel like he's a wallet. So, anyway, let's take a look at the chat, and then we'll get to writing here. Yeah, Grantish Crosby. She made him feel like the guy she settles for, the dependable guy, right? Happy weekend. Thank you, George Barrett. Thanks for stopping by. Stumbled into romantic stuff. It's good to think about as a writer, though, because a lot of your stories are going to have a B-story romance. The one that I'm working on here live has a B-story romance. You want those things. It's difficult to provide romantic progression even in an action novel. What, if any, are your thoughts on Terry Goodkind? So, I don't dislike Terry Goodkind's books. I think that they wander about a bit too much for me. I haven't read all of his big series that he did. I did a video about how I think he's a bit of an auteur. And that could be a good or a bad thing. He has a vision. Excuse me. Terry Goodkind has a vision which he pursues. And, the philosophy that underpins his books is very Randian. And that has to do with Ayn Rand, more objectivist or libertarian kind of philosophy. And so he constructs things with that in mind without thinking about their coherence in the story sometimes. And so that lends his stories a somewhat, not a surreal feeling, but like a layer of just, I don't know. This is a criticism. It feels like it wants to be surreal, but it's not. It feels more down to earth because of his writing style. So there's a little bit of competition between those two things. So I'm not crazy about how that stuff ends up being articulated in his stories. But a lot of people really, love his fantasy novels. My criticism that I've made of him in the past is that he doesn't know what a good book cover is. And so he views the cover as part of the product that he's making. And so if you look at the covers that he's chosen for his books, they're awful. And then he went on a tirade some years ago before he died about how bad this cover for one of his books was. And it was actually a great cover, right? A great cover. It looked great. It was well painted. It was well composed. It was a really good cover. In fact, most fantasy authors would have loved to have a cover that was as well done as this cover. His publisher chose the artist and directed the artist to draw a certain thing for the cover based on their belief about how they're going to market the book. And so this is where I think it's very useful to have a publisher if you're in a position like this, because the publisher, their expertise is selling the book, your expertise is writing the book. So you should kind of let them make those decisions about how they're going to market the book. You should defer to their expertise most of the time. And so the result was a really good looking fantasy book that people would be inclined to pick up and take a look at. And even if they didn't buy it, they might go back and look at Wizard's First Rule and buy that book. But he didn't like it because the character on the cover didn't look like what he imagined the character was in the book, or how he wrote the character. He's like, the character in the book has a dress. This one's wearing pants. The artist is like, I just drew what I was told to draw, right? I didn't read the book because I can't read every book I do a painting for. I just don't have time for that. So, that's just, dude, that's just how it is. Okay. So it's just what, that's how it is. So my criticism is that as an auteur, he views the cover as part of the product. And I've been in the publishing business at this point for a number of years, and that's just not what a cover is or needs to be, and that's not how I view it. The cover is not the product. The cover is an advertisement, and always has been, which is why you see certain trends in covers, in genre covers. The most important goal of a book cover is to communicate genre. So you can pull out like 70s sci-fi books all look the same, even though they're about wildly different stories, and the reason is because you need to communicate the genre, and in the 70s, sci-fi books had a certain look, so they all end up looking the same. Same thing with fantasy books. Every fantasy book from the 80s has that realistic painted cover with like some fantasy people on it, maybe a dragon, some kind of like fantasy landscape. The original kind of pre-release, I think, and maybe first edition cover of Game of Thrones is an incredibly generic fantasy cover. It's just got like a dude on a horse and a medieval looking lady standing there, and then some mountains and like a castle in the background. It doesn't really communicate anything about the story, but it does communicate what the genre is. So I could see someone looking at that and being like, this is a bad cover because it doesn't have Ned Stark doing something with his big sword, that big sword that he executes things with, right? It doesn't have Ned on it. It doesn't have this, right? Someone who hasn't read the book has no idea who Ned Stark is. Who is Ned Stark? We don't know. We just need to know that it's a fantasy book and that it might have things that I want in it. Now, the real criticism of the cover is that it doesn't show how dark Game of Thrones was. That first Song of Ice and Fire book. And all of them are dark. It doesn't communicate how dark the writing is. We needed a higher contrast cover with something more gruesome, because it's a very dark story. Something closer to what you would get on a Glenn Cook cover, Black Company or something like that. Something that really communicates this is actually dark fantasy. But they really wanted to market it as high fantasy, so they just gave it a generic high fantasy cover. It's just a painting. These photorealistic 80s paintings. Although Game of Thrones, I think, came out in the 1990s. You get the idea. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the Oblivion guides. I should do more of them. I'm going to do some more like fun things, ways to break Oblivion and stuff like that. I think that from my experience, women are far more society dependent, prioritize many things according to that. Just as more socializing, yes. Totally. That's why the status of the male in the female fantasy matters. And why men, when they fantasize, their status doesn't matter. Because they want to be free of that rat race and have someone love them on a more intimate level. Whereas the female fantasy is more about becoming, like gaining the intimate level of somebody who's already high status. Whereas the male fantasy is somebody ignoring that and loving you on a human level. Seen your video on the Virgin versus Chad thing. Should we take that seriously? Everything in life is multidimensional. Yeah, I mean, so the Virgin versus Chad thing, it's a layer to look at like the social sexual hierarchy, right? Yeah, it's a way to look at that stuff. And you should take it seriously. I mean, just because I do something in a humorous way doesn't mean that there's not a truth there. In fact, if you're laughing, it's pointing at some kind of truth. And so the truth about like Virgin versus Chad is that we kind of have these, it's not just like two kinds of people. There's different kinds of men in this in our society here. We have these different camps of people in terms of their outlook on life and the way that they act and what they receive from it, and especially resentment, right? Because the guy who doesn't get girls tends to look resentfully upon the man who does, rather than looking at, and this just tends to be a thing that like gamma males or maybe omega males too, the virgins do, is rather than looking at the Chad and being like, well, what is it about the Chad that gives him success or makes women like him? And then how do I be more like that? Like, how do I move my actions into that mode or closer to it? They tend to just look at him resentfully, like, he's shallow and stupid. Why do women like him? Women must be bad. So you get this kind of maybe like resentment of women. Like, women are bad for liking Chad, rather than like, why do women like Chad? If I want women to like me, maybe I should be more like Chad. Which would be sort of where most men would think, is like, how do I improve myself? But the virgin doesn't think that way. He thinks everything with society and with other people is wrong because he doesn't have status. So I think it makes for great villains, thinking about writing, right? Great villains are social outcasts. They're people who resent society. They're people who resent other people being above them, other people being loved. You know, at the heart of Melkor is a resentment for the beauty of the other Valar, the skills of the other Valar, the love of the children of Ilúvatar, like all that stuff. It's resentment. So resentment is a great trait of a villain. Villains are very jealous. That's what it is in The Incredibles, right? The villain is a gamma male. He's a dude who wants to be a hero, but he lacks powers, and the heroes get annoyed with him getting in the way because he's not aware of what he's actually capable of. So he dedicates his life to making inventions that will allow him to destroy heroes. Not to be a hero, right? He's going to make everyone a hero and therefore destroy heroes. But really, it's driven by resentment. Why should people love Mr. Incredible just because he's super strong? Well, because he performs a useful function. Love those first three original Song of Ice and Fire books. I prefer them to the new ones with the generic crown. Yeah. So the old ones are very generic. So people throw out the word generic too much. The old ones are incredibly generic. They're as generic as you can get for the time they were released. They communicate nothing about the story. They look exactly like every other fantasy book from that period of time. They are so generic. But the generic changed. So now having a central object cover, which I've gone over how to design a central object cover. I've used it. Let me find one that has it. Do I have a central object cover? I know I do. Somewhere in here. In this giant stack of books. I don't have all my books here. That's a problem, right? My fault. Wait. This is it. Central object. No, I like mine a little bit better than a lot of others. I put a little effort into it, right? But it's central object. Very typical. Very easy to design. Why did the trend shift that way? It's because it looks more serious. It doesn't look... It's a trend. You don't want it to look like a cheesy 80s fantasy book. So you just come up with something that communicates fantasy but doesn't look like cheesy 80s fantasy. And then what you end up with is everybody just copies that, and so then you end up with a new form of generic, which is just central object cover, so that people don't think that it's from the before times, those awful cheesy 1980s books, which everyone actually really likes. You think of, it's a modern good book, you know. Frazetta's iconic first rendition of the 66 Conan novel definitely backs up your rationale about the book cover. Yeah. Oh, I don't fall into the virgin category. In that video, like I think I talked about, like F. Scott Fitzgerald, if you look at something like The Great Gatsby, it is a virgin that's angry about Chads. Like that's the entire thing. Like, the viewpoint character is angry about like Tom getting women, right? Gatsby is a pathetic character. So Fitzgerald's able to view somewhat correctly like the pathos of Gatsby. Gatsby's an incredibly pathetic character who's full of resentment and regret over the fact that a woman rejected him for not having high enough status. So he created status through crime and then just died a meaningless death. I know a typical gamma male. I had several long conversations with him, and I thought multiple times, if I write exactly what he says, people would say this character is not believable. I would find it believable because I've known men that are like that, have that mindset, Most people may think those thoughts, but they don't just like express them or internalize them. They might think it. It's all about how you act, what you do. The new fantasy novels almost always seem to be deconstructions rather than actual fantasy. Not a fan. Well, I mean, you're always reacting to and using what came before. So deconstruction, people use deconstruction in a weird way now. Deconstruction used to apply to analysis versus deconstruction composition. Like, we're going to write fantasy that's not fantasy. It's a very postmodern idea. I think maybe it's used correctly now, but like 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the word that we used in literature to describe like what people were doing. Rather, they were doing like inversions and things like that. So I do lots of inversions with my books, actually. And I don't know anyone who's read Water of Awakening and considers it a deconstruction of fantasy. But it is an inversion of many tropes that are common with fantasy and with fairy stories. But it includes a lot as well that I think are really important to make the story have cohesion and purpose, right? The journey to the fairy, right? The quest for a talisman are both included in this book. Your main character is a woman rather than a man, and in this case, the man is not questing to gain romance, but she's already married, so she's going to go save her husband. That's a big inversion from what you normally get. You have this kind of standard Celtic fantastical journey which changes the character. That's part of it. It's not like a huge inversion of what's going on. But this book is full of different kinds of inversions about getting there, getting the talisman. It's not there. Getting what you want, but it's not in the way that you wanted to get it. Letting go of the things which you thought were so important, right? Giving up what you quested for other purposes. And then finally, you achieve your objectives, but kind of like the scouring of the Shire, you can't undo. You can't go back, is what you end up with the original thing. So it's there and back again, but kind of like when Bilbo comes back, he's changed. She comes back changed in a literal sense. So there's a lot of inversions in that book. There's inversions in a lot of my books. They're still like fantasy, right? And they're not about how fantasy is bad, but rather what's a different perspective? What's a different way of telling the story? What's something different that we can include in the story? What's something surprising? What's something a little bit just not typical that we can do? So we're responding to the genre by taking certain things from the genre and then doing different things with them. That's the way genre development tends to work. And if you're working outside, if you're trying to work completely outside the genre system, you end up with something, it might be very original, but people may not know why to buy it because they're used to buying things in genres. What about the recent dump of vids on the Sigma male in my feed? What does Sigma infer? Okay. So this is all from Vox Day, and you can just Google Vox Day Sigma male or something, and you'll probably get what he has to say. So he classifies, personality types of men according to their social status, their sexual social status, And so he has alphas are the top. They're the leaders, right? They're the people who naturally gravitate followers, lead, they're assertive, and they also have command, right? So having command doesn't just mean everybody defers to you. It also means you actually have to care for the people below you, or nobody will want to be your friend. That's also part of being an alpha. So there's a responsibility to an alpha. It's not merely that you have status. The status also has responsibility that comes with it. The beta or the bravo, those are the people who are, I think he uses bravo more because beta tends to be like a derisive term, but like bravo male would be just the secondary, right? Like your sergeant. Like, think of it as like a command structure. This is the guy who executes orders, is very assertive, but doesn't command. You know, and without the commander, is left someone in a lurch for like where things should head, right? And then deltas are just followers. They're just average people that just do. They just follow with whatever is there. They don't. They're not. It's not that they're assertive or unassertive. They are merely reactive. And then below that are gammas. Gammas are like the low status man, the man who is resentful of others, the creepy guy. He's unsuccessful with women. He often has higher than average intelligence, and is resentful of everybody else's ability to have social success. Then below that is an omega. The omega is like he knows where he is. And nobody likes him, nobody cares about him, and he knows it. You know. Yeah, the art's generic, but it's beautiful instead of clip art. I have developed over the years a fondness for those covers that look cool but don't match the context at all. Mega Man 2. Mega Man 1. Mega Man 1 has a bizarre cover. Sir Galahad was a virgin and a Chad, so was Doc Savage. It's really about status. Galahad is not a Chad. Galahad is a virtuous guy. He's not a Chad. Not in this context, right? That'd be more like Arthur. Or Lancelot would actually be the Chad. Right? Two Chads cannot coexist. I think my favorite cover of yours is Water of Awakening. Cover paintings by Karen Byatt. So check out his art. Karen Byatt. He also did the covers for Twilight Force and a bunch of other books that I actually haven't read. Great artist. He's from Turkey. Hey guys, I'm in the hospital now. Oh no, sorry. That was Boorman on Gatsby, filmed with Redford. Almost cannot believe critics crapped all over that film. I survived 2 massive spinal strokes the day I was finishing my epic novel. I'm so sorry. I don't know what a spinal stroke is, I think. Like a blood clot in your spine? I don't think the alpha, beta, omega, and gamma stuff applies to humans, though. That is totally something a gamma would say. All right, I'm teasing you, but the question is, how predictive is it? And I actually think it's very predictive. And I feel the same way about personality disorders in psychology. While I'm pretty critical of the effectiveness of therapy, and especially things like SSRIs when it comes to the psychology industry, personality disorders are super predictive. So I actually think the social sexual hierarchy is a very predictive way of looking at personality types. And, you know, they could also have a personality disorder. It's not to say, like, these things don't have overlap or something like that, but it's really like you notice what the way the person acts and the way other people act towards him, and you can infer from that he's going to act a certain way and be a certain way in the future. And that'll determine how you are going to deal with the relationship with him. So, like, if you have a gamma male in your organization, like in your company, you know how he's going to act. He's going to be creepy towards women. He's going to be passive-aggressive. He's going to undercut what other people are doing. He's going to second-guess all of his orders. You have a model for how that guy is going to act, and it's going to be really predictive. Once you recognize the pattern, you're like, I know exactly what to expect from this person, which means I know where to put him and how to cordon him off so that he can maybe be effective with his work while minimizing the negatives. Same thing if you know somebody is just a delta, you know that you got to micromanage them. That's just how it is. And you know that they're going to respond. They're not going to be able to change anything about the workplace culture. They're going to be merely responsive to it. This is male stuff. Women, it's different, right? I'm paralyzed from the waist down. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. Because of pop culture and societal messaging, I think for years I was in danger of falling into that sort of resentful outlook. Maybe it was just adolescence. It's, adolescence, it's really easy to be in that because you're literally the lowest status person on the face of the earth if you're an adolescent male. Everyone hates you. Everyone thinks you're a piece of crap. They're not even kind to you because you're not a child anymore. But you have no money, no power, no ability to affect anything. You're the lowest of the low. So it's easy to be resentful as an adolescent, especially in modern society where you're basically in prison for 8 hours a day with all that. I had a revelation about the last scene of my novel. I was tortured in an MRI machine for 90 minutes in massive pain. So I've had MRIs on my head. I wasn't in pain for that. Other people are like, man, I hate MRIs. I just take a nap, man. It's like, oh, it's so loud. I'm like, I'm deaf. It's cool. Deltas are the backbone of society. Value your deltas, yes. Delta equals competent expert in his field, follows a leader. I don't really think so. I think the deltas, could be. It's more like Bravo. The point is that they exist to do things that other people tell them to do. They're employees. They're the employees. Nothing wrong with that. It's good. Yeah, that's why he tends to use Bravo instead of Beta. It's more like the Bravo is not exactly the average guy. He's more like the support. He's the command support. He's the support. He's somewhat average. Deltas are not low status. They're just rank and file guys. There's more deltas than anything else in his little model. When should you brute force an answer to a question regarding your story versus letting your subconscious ruminate on the issue? I think I'm always for brute forcing. You can always try to... Sometimes when you brute force it, you realize why that doesn't work, and you'll come up with a better idea. So I'm always for brute forcing. Just my approach. Yes, I have a heart valve lag. I developed lupus, and the lagging valve pulled the lupus clots into my spine. Good Lord, I'm so sorry. The male sexual hierarchy is fractal. Yes, you can be everything at the same time depending on your group you're in. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, gammas can be situationally alpha, right? Like, the gamma who runs the D&D group is an alpha in that context. It sounds like astrology for men. That is something a gamma would say. That is actually something a gamma would say, because they don't want to think about it being predictive. The question is are you able to identify this, and is it predictive? Same thing with like personality disorders. If you're able to recognize like cluster B traits in people, or especially women, then you'll know who to avoid and how to deal with people. Is she a narcissist? Does she have a borderline personality disorder? Because it's going to be very predictive. If you recognize somebody has cluster B traits, you know how they're going to act in relationship. You know to stay away. Right. You know that you can't fix them. Do you know what I mean? It's all about how you want to predict it. I always come back. My writing is next level already. We'll go higher. Good. God has this. I'm writing the greatest fantasy novels I can make. It's part of the plan. You have every reason to be resentful. No question. Yeah. Bravoli is what we call the house bouncers here. Okay. An expert in the field can attract ladies. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. The idea is that monogamy enabled European civilization to give deltas access to mating partners. I forgot to mention Sigma. Sigma's just like a lone wolf. The Sigma's the lone wolf. He's the guy who just doesn't really interact with that hierarchy. He doesn't have a lot of friends. But he's generally competent. So like the artist struggling in silence by himself to produce great work is like the Sigma mindset. It's the Sigma. Whereas the Omega is like, I want to have friends. People please love me, and they don't. The Sigma's like, I don't want to talk to you. Go away. I have things to do. The idea is that monogamy enabled European civilization to give deltas access to mating partners, enabling its domination over other civilization. Yeah, a stable family is really important for civilization to exist. And you can't have a stable family without monogamy. It's just not really possible. I wrote a line in my novel I'm so proud of. I think it's special. Awesome. If nothing else, it shows that they have self-discipline and passion. Yes, I think. I even think that most men have all aspects inside of them. Usually one is dominant. Yeah, you can think all of these thoughts. The question is what you do. And so most people are going to have a strong filter away from gamma words and behavior, but gammas don't, because they aren't self-reflective in that way. Their self-reflection is like based on resentment. It's like, I'm great, why don't women love me? Rather than thinking, the thing which I care about, women don't seem to care about. Like that's, as an artist, that's one thing I just think about. It's like, oh man, you must get all the girls because you're out gigging every night and you're so good at guitar. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Why? Well, I had to stop and think about it. It's like, it's because, the only thing that's attractive about that is like, quote, the bad boy thing. That's like, I have long hair and I look like a rebel, right? But if what I want is a girlfriend, it's status. And women instinctively understand the guy gigging at the bar is low status. They just understand that, right? Because you're an entertainer, like you exist for other people's pleasure. That's not nothing high. A rock star has high status only because he has money. Just like in ancient Rome, actors are really low status. So trying to be high status by being an actor is going to not work out for you. You need to be high status by being successful in something else. I am so great. I would give the woman everything. Why do these whores not love me? Literal quote by a gamma. Yeah. It's like I'm 1 year old again, learning to walk. That's rough. Anna. Oh yeah, Tolstoy. Anna Karenina. Is it Anna Karenina? This is also stuff that you'll find in stuff like Pride and Prejudice. You'll find sort of the female interactivity with it, with like the sneaky, smarmy gamma, and like the alpha, right? Like I should go back and like reread stuff like Pride and Prejudice, Evelina, like those kind of books more. Just because like when you're a young man, you're just not interested in the female perspective that much, so you just don't want to read that stuff. Yeah, the reason that like social sexual hierarchy stuff ends up so popular to talk about is that our culture is really stuck in the dating game. The dating game really sucks for young people. And thinking about this stuff probably didn't matter very much in 1960 because people were able to pair up and have families. That's not as easy in 2024. So you have to think about how to master the dating system before you can really hope to have a stable relationship. That really sucks, right? You can't offer a good relationship and then have that as a man. You have to master and think about all this other crap that you don't want to think about. You know? Just that's the way it is. It sucks. All right, let's do a little bit of writing. That's what I meant to do on this stream. But I wanted to talk a little bit about writing and romance and how you write romance matters. It's something that you want to be good at, because if you want to include a good romance in your story, you want it to be meaningful. A gamma would write a romance in a way that would turn off almost everybody who wasn't a gamma. And you can pick this up in lots of things that fantasy writers write, like something like Name of the Wind is very clearly a gamma male sexual fantasy. You're just like automatically proficient at sex and good, and you can have sex with a experienced woman and it's the best she ever had. Same thing with what did I read? Prince of Thorns, right? Very gamma male fantasy. I'm 14 and I'm amazing. You know, you could kind of sniff that out from the way that it's written. It's not written in a way that would appeal to most men, because what most men want is to be loved for themselves, for like their intrinsic value in the things they care about, not just be great because, and have women love you because your sexual technique is so good. There's an obsession with sexual technique for the gamma that is actually really misplaced and silly, because a sexual experience is more than how you move your member. But that's what they think. It's like, oh, I can just, I'm going to write, he's just great. Like, it just feels good. And she's immediately orgasming uncontrollably because of your amazing technique. It's like, that reeks to me like reading Patrick Rothfuss's stuff. It reeks to me of like a guy who's never figured out how women work on a physical level, much less an emotional level, you know? Have you ever watched any of the Stargate shows? Yes. I have a friend from college who was the composer on one of them. Bob Allaire. Yeah, keep in mind, like when you categorize people, it's more a general thing, and it's about like what is it going to be predictive of, what kind of behavior are you trying to predict, rather than some all-encompassing set thing. And of course, if you have free will and you have the ability to change yourself, so if you're a person seething with resentment over women, you can alter that. That is something that's up to you to change. You're not stuck in that little place forever. It's up to you. You can change what you're doing. The worst part about the gamma, I'd like to talk to you sometime. We'll see. So the worst part about the gamma I've seen is the weasel-like morals, very bad morals. The last thing I told the gamma was to go and try and find God. He had a very concerning moral compass. Yeah. It's like, I was making a joke about this in a private chat, was like, Mr. Beast reminds me of the guys I knew in college who were like, here's how you get laid, and it involves like getting a woman really drunk and like, basically taking advantage. How do you take advantage of a woman? Not how do you attract a woman? It's like, here's how you take advantage of women. All right, have a great one, Zedul. I'm sorry that you're having health issues. I hope you recover quickly. All right. See if I wrote what I already wanted. unintelligible syllables. There we go. Series of unintelligible. I don't know why it sometimes does straight quotes. I discovered your channel in 2022 when I was looking for Oblivion guides to save time. I was having a horrible year and was experiencing terrible panic attacks and believing I was going to die. It lingered through early 2023 and faded. It just wasn't a good time, circumstances, you know. Yeah, that happens. I'm sorry. I need to do some more Oblivion guides. I was going to do like how to break Oblivion in like a bunch of different ways. Like how to make yourself invisible permanently. Like how to... I have someone like how to have 0-weight weapons. You know, just like stuff like that. Weird little quirky things about the game that you can get. Like how to get like the best gear at in the game at level 1. You know, you can get a black hand robe at level 1. You can get Daedric stuff at level 1. You could get Umbra at level 1. You could get... What else can you get at level 1? There's a bunch of really good gear that you can get at level 1. So I might do something like that. I might do something like that with Morrowind, like how to start the game at level 1 and like be really ahead, because Morrowind is way more challenging at level 1 than Oblivion is. Oblivion's pretty easy at level 1. I'm gonna go get a little bit of soda. I'll be right back. Some music here. And we're back. Slightly congested today. All right. Thought so. Apparently there's an electrician coming by at 5, so I'm gonna have to duck out of here in a few minutes. How long is this chapter so far? Once, that's pretty good. There was something I wanted to add in here. Well, see, can people's experience be boxed into a personality disorder? Right. It's just it's a predictive label. Saying that it's not valid because it's, you know, human experience is varied is honestly like a gamma response. I'm not trying to insult you, but it's a defensive thing, right? If you think that you have those traits, you can alter them, but you probably don't, right? You probably know, right? It's kind of like having a personality disorder. It's like if somebody has borderline personality disorder, does that define everything about their destiny? No, but it provides a really useful predictive model as an outsider for how they might act. And it also is something that if a person acknowledges that's where they're at, they can actually do some things to mitigate the damages from what they don't want with it, right? People with borderline personality disorder are often really distressed about the outcomes of their disorder. Okay, so it's not, you know, it's just like evaluating a person, be like, he's a guy like this. It just provides a useful model. It's not supposed to be an all-encompassing thing, right? If you find that offensive, then that's probably more on you than it is on me or the ideas. Just saying. You know, you don't have to be 100 million% in anything, right? Life is not like that. You know, a person with a narcissistic personality disorder is going to act a certain way. You can predict how they're going to act. It doesn't mean that there's like 100% certainty or they can't get help or change or something like that either, right? There are people who take any of this stuff way too seriously, though. Just be aware of that, right? People who get obsessed talking about like these little labels, you don't need to be obsessed about it. You don't need to worry about it. It's got like people worried about their own IQ. Like, I have 125 IQ. Am I too stupid to do X, Y, or Z? It's like, probably not. And you're probably thinking way too much about it. Nobody really cares. They really care about what you do and the outcomes of what you do, not what a psychologist tested on some given day about how fast you process information. Like, it just doesn't matter that much. I'm giving it too much importance. The thing about predictive human behavior is most of the time people act within a pretty narrow range of normalcy, right? Most people are normal. So you can kind of count on them to act like normal people. And we only really take note of behaviors when they are outside of the norm, right? You get this, you may hear a girl say like, this guy's creepy. Are most men creepy? The answer is no. It's just you notice when somebody is outside of that normal kind of range and they're acting creepy. Or this person's manipulative. Are most people manipulative? No, you notice it when someone's actually being manipulative, right? Most people have a pretty, like, normally predictable range of behavior. Where I think most people get into trouble is not, am I this way, but rather they expect other people to be normal when they're not. When you run into those exceptions. And I have personally suffered as a result of this. Yeah, it's the same thing with personality tests, right? People take them all way too seriously, right? But I've personally suffered with this in that you have a normal model for normal behavior that's in sort of the typical range of how normal people act. And then you meet somebody who doesn't fit into that, somebody who's crazy, for lack of a better word. They just are outside of that norm. And their behavior seems really unpredictable and awful, right, in a lot of cases. Somebody will say and do things that you don't know how to react to because they're not doing what's normally predictable for you, right? You have this theory of a mind where a mind works like this. I think this way. Other people probably think in similar ways. They have their own minds, but, you know, for instance, if I don't like a food, then I don't want to eat it. Then you meet somebody who doesn't like a food and eats it anyway, and you're like, I don't understand that behavior. There's something else going on, right? So you don't. That throws you for a loop where somebody like will eat an entire spaghetti dinner and then reveal to you later that they hate spaghetti. It's like, well, why did you eat it? And then have like some kind of thing where it's like, I wanted you to like me, or, you know, it's like, that's not normal, right? We have a normal thing of like, do you want pizza? No, I I don't want any pizza. Okay, great. Once you get someone who's like, gets really offended, they're like, why are you so offended? It's like, well, you offered me pizza. And I said I didn't want any. It's like, yeah, so? It's like, well, you didn't make anything else for me. It's like, normal people don't ask for that. But you maybe have encountered someone like this. Like someone with borderline personality disorder will explode at something innocuous you said that no normal person would take offense at. And you're just like, what happened? What did I do? Am I bad? Did I not understand how to act? No, just that person has a really has a different behavior mode that if you're just applying kind of the normal range of normal human reactions, they didn't fit into it. So if you know that that person has borderline personality disorder or borderline traits, then you can not only predict when that's going to happen, you aren't caught off guard and you don't do some sort of thing like maybe I miscalculated. You're just like, oh, that person, they're obviously expressing some other psychological thing that they have. So being able to have a model for, in general, how someone's supposed to act normally, and then when someone doesn't fit into that, having maybe some alternative models, that I think is really useful. It's an interesting and I think useful way to think about people so that you don't end up in bad situations or like tearing your hair out trying to figure out how somebody's supposed to act or how you're supposed to act around somebody. Just let it go. Like if somebody doesn't respond to normal behavior normally, then you don't need to worry about that person's distress over your normal behavior, right? So if we look at someone like a gamma, if you look at a gamma male, that's just it's a social sexual behavior pattern. And if somebody is exhibiting that pattern, you can guess that they're going to have that pattern in the future. Putting a label on it just helps you to identify when you see that pattern outside of that. Oh, this person acts like this other person I knew, so I can expect with some, high probability that they're going to act like this other person I knew in the future, right? That they're going to continue that behavior pattern. Well, I recognize that they're doing this thing this other person did. Like they're acting like a secret king. They're saying, well, actually, I'm the reality police for everyone and going to correct everyone. You're going to say, well, actually, all the time in a normal human conversation. Oh, I remember Bill was like that. Everyone hated him and he was super creepy around women. This guy, I bet you, is going to try to be creepy around women. I'm not going to invite my female friends around when he's around to prevent problems. That's, putting that label on it can help you because it can help you to see the patterns repeating. The point is, like, what are you going to predict with that? Most people's behavior doesn't need a lot of prediction because they just act normally, right? You don't have to think about some kind of weird behavior model for them because they just act like a normal human being. So I always keep that in mind. It's like most men are deltas, right? Yeah, that just means they act normally. They are looking for a job where they can just do their job well and get paid for it, be productive and get paid for their productivity. They don't want conflict. They want peace. That's a pretty normal thing, right? You can expect normal people to act that way. You can expect somebody who's really assertive to be assertive in other circumstances as well, right? It's just behavior patterns. Yeah, Reddit, the heart of darkness. People immediately go, Redditor, yes. Reddit is like, someone acts like a Redditor, then they're probably a gamma male. And so you can guess that there's going to be other things that go along with that. They're not going to be successful with women. When they try to be successful with women, it's a manipulative act, right? They try to manipulate women into intimacy. And they think that somehow women are broken when women don't like them or don't respond to them. Rather than just looking at it objectively, like, women don't respond well to that. Maybe I should say different things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, use Redditor. You can replace Gamma with Redditor if you want. Or whatever thing you want. Like, that's Vox Day stuff. So I'm not Vox Day, and I'm not going to explain his philosophies and stuff the way he would. You can just go read his blog if you want the real deal, right? I would never presume to rip him off and then say that things were different than what they are, which is what I see people do on Twitter. They like rip off his terminology and they get it all wrong because they're gammas or something, or like they just haven't thought much about it, or like why people who act a certain way tend to always act a certain way. So that's all right. You can call it a Redditor. You can call it a fedora. I call them fedoras a lot. Milady, right? They have this weird... They put women on a pedestal and they view them as garbage at the same time. That's like the weirdness of the Redditor. It's like women are special, amazing creatures. Also, they're bad for not liking me. You know, how do you have that kind of doublethink? Well, you have to, because you look at yourself as special. I'm a secret king. I'm a super special guy. If I'm special, therefore people should like me for being special. And it doesn't work that way. People don't like you for being special. They like you for other reasons. Mainly, they like you for the way that you act around them and the things you do. So the fedoras, do they ever help other people without expecting something in return? Probably not. When they help other people, it's a manipulative act. And women especially pick up on that. They're like, oh, no. I don't need you to help me with my computer. I'll have Dan help me. Why? Because Dan is not a creep. What do they really mean? It's like, Dan is not going to expect something in return for doing his IT job. He's going to do his job and be cordial and normal to me in the office. Because he's a normal married guy who's normal, right? Like, do you know what I mean? And so the seething Redditor who's working in IT and doesn't get ahead in it is like, women are bad. Like, why don't, women want me to fix all their computers and then they want Dan to do it instead. It's like, don't they know that I know more than Dan? It's like, they do, but they don't care because they think that you're going to leverage that into some sort of sexual favor, which so many of these guys do. It's why there's so many creeps. Like, why are there so many creeps in all of these fandoms? Well, they're full of this personality type, like this Redditor personality type, that I need to be a mod for this community so I can manipulate people into sending me nudes, right? Everything has some sort of weird, creepy, like, if not primary motivator, like at least secondary or tertiary motivator. It's like, it's why there's so many creeps at, conventions. Why are there so many creeps at conventions? Well, because they think that that's an opportunity for them to change their status, right? They're normally, in the normal world, they're low status and everyone knows it. But if I can go to, this is like the mindset of the Gamma. It's the mindset of like the Redditor. It's the mindset of the Fedora, right? The mindset of the Fedora is, what can I do to gain status? Besides being different, changing my mode. So they're like, I'm going to write sci-fi books and then women will like me. It's like, bro, no. I write sci-fi books. I don't do it so women will like me. I write sci-fi books because I like writing science fiction stories. My wife doesn't love me because I wrote fantasy novels. Now, she likes the fantasy novels that I wrote for her, but she loves me for other virtues and other reasons, right? She doesn't wax poetic about my work all the time. And that's fine, because I'm not my work. I'm me, right? But the Gamma will be like, okay, I'll have this convention. All the fans of this stuff will come here. I'll control the convention. I'll control who gets to go where finally. They're looking for a way to have control over other people. And then I'll be able to get people alone. And they'll want something from me. And if they want something from me, then I can ask for something from them. And that something is going to be a sexual favor. They like think of this long game for sexual favors rather than like sex being the a matriculative part of a relationship. Do you know what I mean? Like they objectify sex. So that's why they, at the same time, women are on pedestals and they're these special princesses because of whatever. And they're also dirt for not liking you for being special, right? It's like this internal narcissistic feeling. And if you wanted to put it as a personality type, the Gamma is a covert narcissist, right? There'd be a strong overlap. So if you look at like covert narcissism, covert narcissism is going to have all of the same traits as like the Redditor. Redditors are very much, on Reddit, they tend to be grandiose narcissists. In real life, they tend to be kind of covert narcissists, where like they're secret kings, They are secretly special, and people just need to recognize that. You know, they're obsessed with themselves and their specialness, rather than what they do for other people. Oh, it's 5 o'clock. I actually got to get going because I think I do have an electrician coming here in a minute. So anyway, we wrote like 1,500 words and talked a lot, so that's cool. All right, let's see how much we wrote. This is a pretty easygoing stream. I might do another one because I want to write more. I really am interested in this chapter here. Probably not a lot today because I wanted to interact with people because I like interacting with people. Yeah, 1,600 words. That's all right. Yeah, our merry band stumbled upon a ritual festival of medieval space cadets searching for their astral plane. So I'll let you guys in on the secret, which is that basically they have modern technology, but they don't remember how to use it, and it's they're gonna come to like another revelation beyond this. They're worshiping like a bad god, and they're taking hallucinogens. And so what we're gonna have next is this Dionysian ritual where they eat a dragon. They get saved by Crete and brought to like basically a computer, and then they finally escape. And then the next chapter, they're going to meet the final witch, the witch who has control over Alfred's father. And then there's one last little surprise I have for everyone with this, that's gonna pull everything together in a really wacky way. So. Talk about the Redditor. Some do behave strange. Long ago, a friend called to whisper if Costa asks you and I were speaking on the phone Saturday. Yelled and blamed me for years for her divorce, non-custody over infidelity because I didn't pick up on one that she has been cheating. yeah, that's a funny thing, right? It's like I want you to cover for my cheating, but why didn't you realize that that's what I was doing when I asked you to do this? It's like, because normal people don't do that? That's not like a normal favor to ask of a person, of a friend. Like, that's weird. So anyway, yeah, that's my whole thing about, the social sexual hierarchy. It's a model for how you want to predict behavior. And if you notice behavior patterns and you notice certain people fit into those behavior patterns, you can reasonably assume that those behavior patterns are going to repeat in the future, especially if they've repeated a lot in the past. So yeah, your typical Fedora, Redditor, Gamma Male guy, if they all act the same way, we can even call it like a personality disorder if that wants to frame it. We just don't have a clinician who's drawing a line around and saying, this is narcissistic personality disorder. But that's what it is. It's kind of like a variant of NPD, right? Narcissistic personality disorder. So some narcissists can have high status, some have low, so it's like a narcissist with low status is like the gamma. So being able to say like, I noticed that this person is acting creepy and weird and is doing these things these other creepy, weird people did. Maybe I should take that into account and not expect them to act like a normal person in the future. That's all I'm saying. That's what's useful about it, right? Just like being able to see if a girl has borderline personality disorder or borderline traits, you know what to do with that person in the future. That's my whole. It's not 100%. Nothing is. Nothing can be, really, right? It doesn't need to be all-encompassing. It's like worrying about your IQ. You probably just don't need to worry about your IQ very much. So anyway, guys, I'll see you all next time and have a great day.